Now, I'm personally not a big union supporter. I recognize the role they play in trying to protect workers, but honestly, I think right to work is the way to go. And I personally blame a lot of these unions as the reason why many of these manufacturing jobs have actually fled from America, because you have a lot of these overzealous reps actually trying to get unobtainable deals for all of their members. However, with so many of these manufacturing jobs having actually fled from America, it's easy to see why people like United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain have actually come out in support of Donald Trump and his tariffs. And he's actually going to explain why the middle class is in such dire straits to Kaitlan Collins over on CNN. But before we get this clip, don't forget to like and comment on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
You know, there's excess capacity all over this country right now. And Stellantis has excess capacity right in Warren, Michigan, where they're laying people off again. They could move Ram truck production there in very short order, be producing Ram trucks. I'm here in Chattanooga, Tennessee right now at Volkswagen. Volkswagen produces 75% of their vehicles in Mexico. And, you know, there's excess capacity right here at this plant. So Lordstown, Ohio, Lordstown Assembly Plant. I mean, there's plenty of capacity in this country. People forget about the arsenal of democracy and how excess capacity in this country was used to support the war effort and delivered a victory in World War II for America. And so we really have to look at reality and quit using fear tactics and scare tactics and talking about this.
I mean, your auto workers, maybe they're happy with the auto tariffs. We saw some of them in the Rose Garden yesterday cheering the president's moves. But what about when they're paying more for food and clothes and electronics? Are they worried about that tonight?
Well, I mean, I think everyone's worried about it, but let's talk about the real problem here. The real problem isn't these tariffs. The real problem here is corporate greed. I mean, let's talk about the auto industry from 2020 to 2023 when they jacked up the price of vehicles 35%. It wasn't because wages went up. It wasn't because of tariffs. People were manipulating and price gouging consumer because of a pandemic that was in place. So, you know, it's a choice. And I keep hearing the cry. I've heard this crying all day about the stock market. You know, a majority of Americans don't own stock. Working class people, you know, 60% don't have any retirement savings. That's the crisis in this country. That's what we need to be talking about. And how do we make the trade laws and make these things fairer and bring work back to puts people to work where they can have a decent quality of life.
Yeah, and you know, on that retirement comment, that's something Senator Bernie Sanders would agree with you on. But I think some people in the audience watching who've seen you on this show before, heard you talk, especially during the campaign at the Democratic convention and whatnot, they might be surprised to hear you saying, no, I agree with what President Trump is doing on this front. The vice president was actually asked about this earlier tonight, and this was his response to your comments.
How funny is it watching Shawn Fain, the auto workers union guy, who, by the way, picked the guy who picked the worst horse ever. I mean, like, you picked Kamala over Trump, and now he's praising the president. I bet you he's got to be embarrassed by his choice in this last election.
Well, you know, he trashed us, but we're welcome to have everybody on the team. And Shawn Fain recognizes what so many auto workers recognize, which is that President Trump's policies are great. And yes, there is some transition that's going to come along with this, but you're already seeing the evidence that things are getting better.
What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, you know, let's be blunt about it. There's a lot of things we disagree with this administration on, like eliminating contracts for, you know, hundreds of thousands of federal workers. But on this issue, we agree on tariffs. And this is what's wrong. This is the problem of what's wrong in America right now. This is why half of Americans don't vote. Because one party gets in power and the other party blocks everything. The other party gets in power and the other party tries to block everything. And what happens in that process is the people get left behind. So leaders, it's time for leaders to step up and lead. And just because Donald Trump supports tariffs and we didn't support Donald Trump in the election doesn't mean we're going to say, well, because Donald Trump supports it now, we're going to say they're bad. We believe this is the right thing to do at this time, especially for the auto industry. And regardless of political party, we've been clear about this. You know, we don't care what party people come from. Our mission doesn't change. We expect workers' rights to be taken care of. We expect our leaders of this country to look after working class people in this country. And that's what we stand for. There's no flip-flopping. There's no 180. It's just it's having integrity.
So the main point Shawn Fain is actually making there is that, yes, working Americans are actually suffering because they're losing their jobs, okay? But of course, Kaitlan Clark, she says, well, people are actually worried about the price of their food and electronics going up, okay? But that doesn't matter if you don't have a job to get the money to be able to afford those in the first place. The first thing has to come is employment. Then, of course, you can get the money, and then, of course, we have products. And yes, products could go up under tariffs, but the whole point of what Donald Trump is doing is either to have manufacturing brought back to this country to avoid massive tariffs, or to lower the tariffs on our products in other countries so we can actually sell more, both of which would result in more people having jobs, disposable income, and then being able to afford those products that Kaitlan Collins is obviously worried about, okay? But it's the simple fact that we have accepted here in America, apparently, that manufacturing is something that should be done in third world countries for slave wages, something that, of course, we shouldn't be supporting. These are good, high-paying, quality jobs that people can actually provide for themselves and their families on, okay? And by the way, as far as Shawn Fain goes, I don't take blame away from him. Part of the whole demand of United Auto Workers is to have a 4-day work week and yet still get paid for the full 5 days, and then on top of that, have an extra 50% pay increase. These demands are completely ludicrous, and as Rush Limbaugh actually used to point out, some of these demands actually made the cars more expensive than they could sell them for, okay? So yes, a net loss for the company. And of course, I don't take the blame away from the companies entirely, because we all know what happened to car prices back during the pandemic, okay? So yes, if you want to bring manufacturing back, we have to, of course, have this tariff trade war, okay? But also, people like Shawn Fain will have to actually make some concessions and admit that, yes, we can't actually pay the workers these exorbitant salaries. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me.